right, welcome to today's new lesson. It is section 9.4, day 1, solve using square roots. And we're going to start this lesson by just a little vocab. What is a radical expression? And when you see the word radical, it's any expression that involves a square root sign. We call this a radical. So here's an example, a square root sign with some stuff underneath it. And today's lesson starts by, can you plug these numbers in and evaluate a radical expression? So let's go ahead. We're just going to type this right in the calculator. So square root. Okay, b squared. Well, b is -2. So we need to square -2. Now remember, when it's negative and you're squaring it, you have to put it in parentheses. Okay, b squared minus 4 times a is 1, times c is -3. So let's see if you guys can all type this in the calculator and see if we get the same answer. And please actually practice this with your calculator. Okay, square root. Parenthesis, -2 squared minus 4 times 1 times -3. You don't need the parentheses on these. You only need the parenthesis when you're squaring a negative. All right, did everybody get 4? The answer should be 4. All right, let's try 2. Same thing. Let's plug everything in and see if you guys can evaluate it on the calculator. Now this one I'm just going to do straight in the calculator, and let's see what happens. Okay, so big square root sign. All right, b squared. So b is -3. So parentheses, -3 squared minus 4 times a is 2, times c is -5. All right, let's see if we all get 7. The answer is 7. So these are just, can you type stuff in your calculator? Okay, down below, just more practicing, can you type stuff in the calculator? Okay, now some of you are probably wondering what this plus or minus sign does. It actually means you're going to get 2 separate answers. You have to type the problem in 2 times. The first time, you're going to type it in with the plus sign. And the second time, you're going to type it in with the minus sign. There's no button that does both of these at once. You have to do the problem twice. Okay, let's type this in and let's get its decimal answer. And then we're going to type this in separately and get its decimal answer. Okay, so since they're fractions, I'm going to do alpha y equals fraction, right? And then just type it straight in. So for this one, we have 1 plus 2 square roots of 3 all over 4. So our first answer, nearest hundredth, we're going to round it to 1.12. And then we'll do this one, same problem but with the minus sign. So alpha y equals fraction. And now 1 minus 2 root 3 all over 4. And that one, we'll round it to -0.62. -0.62. So these are our 2 answers, this one and this one. Okay, so again on number 2, the plus or minus just means you do the problem twice. One of them is going to be with the plus version, and one of them is going to be with the minus version. So go ahead and type both of those in. First one is 6 plus square root of 5. We get 8.24 if we round to the nearest hundredth. And the next one is 6 minus root 5. And we get 3.76 if we round it to the nearest hundredth. That's it. These are really easy, just all in the calculator. Now would be a great time to pause the video and you guys try 3 and 4 on your own. Since you can pause, I'm just going to keep going and do them for you. Number 3, same thing. Plus or minus means you do it twice. One of them is for plus root 8, and one of them is for minus root 8. And then we type them in the calculator and get our 2 answers. 4 plus root 8 is 6.83 rounded. And 4 minus root 8 is 1.17 rounded. And those are your 2 answers. Number 4 is a fraction, so I need to go do alpha y equals option 1 fraction and type them in. Again, I'll write it out for you guys. There are 2 different versions of the problem. One is with the plus sign, and one is with the minus sign. So 2 plus root 3 divided by 3, that's 1.24. And then same thing with the minus, 2 minus root 3, all divided by 3. And that is 0.09. And those are your 2 answers. Okay, so the front side was all just calculations. Now on the back, solve using square roots. Okay, so go ahead and flip it over. Solving equations using square roots. An equation that has an exponent of 2 can sometimes be solved using a square root. Every square root has 2 solutions. Okay, so here's what happens. If I asked you guys, what number squared is 4? What would you say? What number squared is 4? I bet most of you guys would say 2. You're right. There's also another one. There's another number that when you square it, you get 4. And that is negative 2. So that's why there's always 2 solutions. Whenever you have a squared problem, you always get 2 solutions. And the way you find them is by square rooting both sides. Squaring and square rooting cancel each other, so you get x. The square root of 4 is 2. And then because we always get 2 answers, you always put a plus or minus out front. So that's where we get x equals plus or minus root 2. One other thing you guys should know, and then we'll do a bunch of problems. A number squared will never equal a negative. So when you have a number squared equaling a negative, there will be no solution. So let's try this one. You would square root Square and square root cancel, so you get x. Go ahead and type this in the calculator. See what you get. Type in the square root of -5. Square root of -5. You're going to get an error. Error, non-real answer. That means no solution. Okay, so this one you would just say no solution. Okay, let's try some. So just like solving an equation, we're going to start by drawing our wall and trying to isolate the x squared. So how are we going to undo this multiplying by 2? We're going to divide both sides by 2 to start. And if you divide both sides by 2, these cancel. You get x squared equals 4. Now, how do we solve for x? Well, when it's something squared equals a number, we square root both sides. Squaring and square rooting cancel. You're left with x equals. Okay, square root of 4 is 2, but don't forget plus or minus, because you always get 2 answers for these. Plus or minus 2. All right, let's try number 2. Draw your wall. We need to isolate first. So the very first thing we have to do is add this 18 over to the other side. These cancel. You get m squared equals, these also cancel, so 0. M squared equals 0. To solve, when you have something squared equals a number, you square root both sides. Squaring a square root cancels. You get m equals. Now, the square root of 0 is just 0. And when it's 0, there's no need to put a plus or minus because 0 is just 0. So, just 0. Okay, number 3. We're going to start by drawing our wall and isolating the a squared. So we're going to add 3, add 3. Okay, these cancel. We get a squared equals -1. To solve, when you have a squared equals a number, we square root both sides. Squaring a square root cancels, you get a. But remember what we said. When you have something squared equals a negative, you are going to get no solution. So actually, we can stop right here and say no solution. All right, down to the bottom. I'm going to kind of breeze through these a little bit. So on this one, we're going to add 11 to both sides. We get 3x squared equals 18. Divide by 3, divide by 3. We get x squared equals 6. To solve, we square root both sides. Squaring a square root will cancel. And we get x equals. Okay, now we don't know square root of 6, so we're going to have to do it in the calculator. Okay, so what is the square root of 6? Square root of 6 is 2.45. 2.45, and then don't forget plus or minus, because you always want 2 solutions. Plus or minus 2.45. All right, on to number 5. Draw your wall and isolate. First thing, we would have to minus 12. You get 5w squared equals -20. And then to keep isolating, we divide by 5, divide by 5. We get w squared equals -4. Now remember, when something squared equals a negative, you can stop and say no solution. And last one, number 61, also known as number 6. All right, let's isolate. Draw your wall. You would minus the 11 from both sides. And you get 2x squared equals 0. Isolate a little bit further. We would divide by 2, and we're left with x squared equals 0. To solve x squared equals a number, we square root both sides. And squaring a square root cancels. We're left with x equals, well, the square root of 0 is 0, and 0 does not need a plus or minus. So I would stop right here, x equals 0. All right, guys, I'm going to keep going, but you can stop the video right now. We're probably going to do this portion another day, but here we go. These are a little bit harder. Solve the following equations. Okay, now here's the problem here. You cannot distribute into a binomial squared. Let's write that down. No distributing. You cannot distribute. No distributing. So how else are we going to get rid of the 6? We're going to divide by it. We're going to divide by that 6 right away. And we're left with x minus 4 squared equals 7. Okay, now to undo something squared equals 7, we're going to square root both sides. And remember, just like before, when you square root a square, they cancel. You're left with x minus 4 equals, let's calculate square root of 7. That's 2.65. Now don't forget it's plus or minus. Okay, so now let's draw our wall, and to officially solve for x, we're going to add the 4 to both sides. Okay, these are going to cancel. We get x equals. Now this you guys are going to type in the calculator. And remember from yesterday's lesson, you have to type it in twice. You're going to have to type in 4 plus 2.65, but also 4 minus 2.65. Remember that plus or minus, you have to do it twice. Okay, so let's do the plus version first. 4 plus 2.65 is 6.65. And then 4 minus 2.65 is 1.35. Those are our two solutions. Okay, I'm going to keep going and do the rest, but you guys, again, we're probably going to do these another day. Number 8, no distributing into a binomial squared. So we need to divide by 2 first. Okay, they cancel. We're left with x minus 2 squared equals 9. Okay, when you have something squared equals a number, to solve, we square root both sides. And square root cancel. You're left with x minus 2 equals, well, the square root of 9 is 3. Don't forget plus or minus. All right, now we need to get x alone. So to get x alone, we need to add that 2 over to the other side. Okay, so let's see what we have. We have x equals plus or minus 3 plus 2. Okay, so again, we're gonna have to do this twice. We're gonna have to do the 2 plus version 3, and then we're gonna have to do the 2 minus the 3. Because remember that plus or minus, we have 2 different problems. Okay, 2 plus 3 is 5. 2 minus 3 is -1. And those are our 2 solutions, 5 and -1. All right, I'm going to pause this video. I'm going to stop this one here. That is solving more quadratics. Thank you guys for watching.